Hello, my name is Kirsty Delgado. In this presentation, I will be discussing the major aspects from my criminal law class. The major aspects I will be going over in this presentation are civil and criminal proceedings and how they compare and contrast, the difference between procedural and substantive due process, English common law to modern jurisdiction, constitutional law, case law, and statute law, ex post facto law, burden of proof in criminal proceedings, the legal elements of crimes, and legal defenses. Civil and criminal proceedings. Similarities are both civil and criminal proceedings are created to discourage and punish wrongdoing. Both of these are offenses against another. Now, their differences: civil law is an offense against a private party or an individual, whereas criminal law is an offense against society, the public, or the state. Also, civil cases are initiated by private parties, whereas criminal cases are initiated by state or federal government. Civil cases, their deciding party at the end of court is the judge, whereas criminal cases, the deciding party at the end of court is actually the jury. Civil cases, punishment normally ends up being money owed to the victim. And then in criminal cases, the punishment is normally a fine, community service, or it could be imprisonment. The difference between procedural and substantive due process. Procedural due process and substantive due process both fall under corporal punishment. But procedural due process is when the state did not conduct a fair investigation of an issue before actually punishing the individual. And substantive due process is when the state's conduct is a shock to the conscience because of the severity and brutality of the punishment that they enforced. English common law to modern jurisprudence. English common law was developed by the English king, royal judges, and ecclesiastical authorities in England. In the early 1600s, English settlers came to North America and brought over the English common law. Over time, because of America and England's hostility, the Americans created their own law. This brought about our modern law. Modern law consists of statutes created by legislative bodies. Some common laws remain, or they were modified, or they just created completely new laws altogether. Constitutional law, case law, and statute law. Constitutional law are laws from state constitutions and one section of the United States Constitution. Case law, also known as precedent law, originates from court decisions established as case law by the judges. Statute law are criminal laws brought to law by the legislative body. Ex post facto law is a criminal law made retroactive to punish prior conduct that was not criminal when the act was done. Now, the U.S. Constitution, sections 9 and 10, forbid the U.S. Congress and all states from making any ex post facto criminal laws. The ex post facto law applies only to the area of criminal laws and the power of state and legislative bodies. Burden of proof in criminal proceedings. Burden of proof is the obligation of a party in a trial to produce evidence that proves the claims made against the opposing party. This is, in a sense, the slang phrase of innocent until proven guilty. Now, in criminal proceedings, the prosecution always has the obligation of burden of proof. And also, burden of proof is essential in proving to the jury the defendant is guilty. Criminal defendants cannot be convicted of crimes based on evidence less than beyond a reasonable doubt. This is due to the Due Process Clause in the 5th and 14th Amendments. Legal elements of crime. Actus rea, mens rea, and concurrence are all elements that are essential to be proved in court in order for a criminal to be liable. Now, mens rea, which is also known as guilty mind, means that defendant knew or had the intention of the wrongdoing. And concurrence means that actus rea, which is the act, and mens rea, the guilty mind, happened at the same time during the criminal act that the defendant did. Now, the person has to be proven guilty of all three of these in order to be criminally liable. So if there is no mens rea or concurrence of a crime, then this person cannot be criminally liable. So then mens rea and concurrence both become legal elements of a crime. Legal defenses, or affirmative defenses, take one of two stands. The one stand is that the defendant has an excuse for his or her criminal conduct, whereas the second stand says that the defendant has a justification for his or her criminal conduct. Now, some legal defenses, as examples, are the defense of immunity, mistake or ignorance defense, intoxication or drug condition defense, duress defense, coercion defense, compulsion defense, necessity or choice of evils, alibi, double jeopardy, and more. Thank you for viewing my presentation.